Could the Dallas Cowboys be making a play for a big name receiver this offseason? We'll break it down on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And we are answering your Twitter questions today. And Landon and I started making the graphic for today's show on YouTube, which, by the way, you can go check that out. And every time I would look at Twitter, a new wide receiver would either be released or be or request a trade. So far, in the last 15 minutes, we've had Tyler Lockett released, we've had Christian Kirk released, and now we have DK Metcalf requesting a trade. It seems like the Seahawks are going to try to get this done. One of our questions, actually, we had several people ask this, is do you see the Cowboys targeting a big name receiver this offseason, whether it's via trade or free agency?
Well, no, don't you see what's happening is that the NFL is giving up passing, and that's why they're getting rid of all their wide receivers, right? It's just going to be running the football from now on, Marcus. And guess what? Running backs matter. No,
true, but go ahead.
I think that there's lots of opportunities at this point now for the Cowboys to get, especially a wide receiver too. Specifically, what the Cowboys are looking for, man, it's a target-rich environment right now, right? The free agent market has really kind of ballooned, as you mentioned, the last few days as people are coming. Well, we shouldn't just say the free agent market, but the available wide receiver market, right? Because we're including players that are currently under contract that are requesting trade into this as well. So it does seem like there are a lot of guys out there that if the Cowboys, are willing to spend a little bit of money, they can go out and get a really nice wide receiver too to kind of really help this pass offense and just kind of check it off of the list of things that you would need to kind of go into the draft having to get. I will say this, right? Now that you have Osa signed, getting a high-end secondary weapon for this offense really becomes kind of the priority for as far as like draft shopping list things, right? And I think that if you could find a way to check that list off, check that thing off your list before going into the draft, man, then you could really just kind of draft free and just pick best player available as it comes to you.
So let's run through some names because we have a lot of receivers. I don't want to talk about every single one of these guys, but let's just give you the guys that are currently available. So we've got Chris Godwin. These are all the unrestricted free agents. Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Darius Slayton, Keenan Allen, Deontay Johnson, if you want to get on that roller coaster, wow. Mike Williams, Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore, Mecole Hardman, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Brandon Cooks. We've got Davante Adams, who was released on Tuesday. We've got DK Metcalf, who is requesting a trade. We've got Cooper Kupp, who is requesting a trade. Of all those names, who do you think makes the most sense with Dallas?
I think several of them do make sense, right? Like, I think obviously the particulars of the situation really matter as far as, the economics of it. But as far as like schematic fit and like who you're looking to pair on your team with CeeDee Lamb, I like the kind of bigger body guys who could play a little bit more X, right? That allows you to really move CD around a little bit more. I know you already have kind of like that, something in that in Jalen Tolbert, but to kind of upgrade it to a more, Pro Bowl level version of that would be really nice. But I also think that you could probably find a way if you're bullish on Tolbert's development, that you could go and get a smaller guy that could be a Z guy that maybe you don't need to deploy unless you're getting into 3 wide receiver sets or kind of you're looking to add more speed on the field. I do think that I'm of two minds, right? Like, I feel like you do need a bigger body, like an alpha dog type that can be an X receiver on the backside by himself. Just allow CD to kind of move around and be that chess piece. But you also feel like this team needs speed, right? And that this team is kind of lacking someone to take the top off a little bit. So, and I love Turpin and everything, but I just don't know that like a full-time role as a wide receiver is necessarily in the cards for him. So,
and that's why I think you're describing DK Metcalf, right? Like that's a big X receiver who provides speed, that has played his best football under Brian Schottenheimer, right? The problem with Metcalf is you'd have to trade picks. Probably a second-round pick is what it's ultimately going to be. And then you're going to have to pay him because his last year of his contract is up, and that's why he's getting traded. It's because he wants a new deal. I don't think Dallas is going to be in that type of business where they're giving up picks to sign somebody. I've got to assume that as much fun as that would be, and as great of a fit that would be, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, like I mentioned before, part of the appeal there is to just knock one of your things off your shopping list for the draft, and you're not really doing that if you're trading a second-round pick, right? Like you're ultimately just kind of trading one of the things that you're shopping for, and just getting it a different way. So I tend to think that and then you obviously, like you mentioned, you also have to pay him, right? Like and right now, I think we talked about it offline. He's making currently something in the area of $18 million a year. He's going to want more than that,
he's going to want the 30-ish. He's going to want the Brandon Ayuk deal last year, at least, which is $31 million a year.
So that's not necessarily something that the Cowboys are going to want.
No, it'd be fun, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I do think it's probably more in the area of, if they're going to do this, it's going to be one of these more veteran guys that is not necessarily in the prime of their career, but still playing good football, that you could get in the $10 to $18 million, maybe $20 million range. Probably not that much though. That you're going to be able to get in free agency, and there's only a couple of those guys. And to me, I think Davante Adams makes some sense. I know it seems like a pipe dream, but if he's only, let's say he's asking for somewhere between $12 to $16 million a year, you can get him on a short-term situation and figure out the money. I just think it makes a lot of sense. They have a history, CD and him have a history. They really respect each other. I actually saw just a clip this morning. I think they were on, Get Up with Kay or something, another one of the shows together to talking. So, yeah, I think there's like a mutual respect there, and I think it makes some sense schematically. The question is he wants to live on the West Coast, so is that going to get in the way? What's the money going to look like? There's a lot there. There's a lot with all these guys, but I do think that if you could make all that work, Davante Adams makes some schematic sense.
I would just tell Davante, hey, Dallas is way west of New Jersey. Like this is the best you can do, right?
Very west.
My guess is that they don't go after somebody like that, and it's more somebody if they go after a receiver at all, it's going to be like in the $7 to $10 million range,
probably.
And that's where someone like Marquise Hollywood Brown is interesting for me, because Hollywood's 27 years old. This is somebody who has played the majority of his career as an outside receiver. He's got a great relationship with CeeDee Lamb, who they played together at Oklahoma. Right. Now, the problem with Hollywood is he hasn't been able to stay healthy. He only played like 160 snaps last year. But this is somebody that can make plays down the field, and he's relatively cheap, and he's still young. I think having a wide receiver room of CeeDee Lamb, Hollywood Brown, Jalen Tolbert, Jonathan Mingo, it's not amazing, but I think you'll be okay.
Hollywood is interesting because I do think that he kind of is sort of in the middle of what you're looking for, like a more veteran receiver. He brings you some of the speed that we were talking about. He's not quite the big body X receiver type that you want to put on the outside, but I do think he has the kind of versatility that you're looking for, so that you could move him around in conjunction with CD. The other element too that I think he brings is, obviously he comes from an offensive system where they ask their wide receivers to block, so he does have some experience there, of at least being a blocker. Maybe you don't, you can find a way to not have to deploy him out there as much on first and second downs, or only as much when you could rotate him in with Tolbert a little bit, to kind of mitigate that.
Yeah.
But I do think, all of those things, the price, the fit, the chemistry, all of those other aspects really seem to fit kind of the profile of what you're looking for in a free agent wide receiver.
Yeah, we'll see what the Cowboys do at receiver, but I've got to imagine with so many receivers being available and a clear need for Dallas, even if they were to bring back Brandon Cooks, who we mentioned as well as an option, got to assume that they're going to bring in at least one vet before we get to the draft. Later, we've got more questions, concluding, could the Cowboys be making a trade before free agency? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Chewy. You've probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet healthcare, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all of your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food to treats to toys to bedding and grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth, vet visits, and even in-person vet clinics rolling out nationwide. And the auto ship is a game changer. You can set up automatic deliveries for foods, treats, or any essential so that you never run out. Plus, you can cancel at any time for any reason. Right now, Chewy has everything you need to keep your pets happy and healthy. You can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Our next question comes from Jake. He wants to know, could the Cowboys make any trades before free agency? And it sure sounds like Jerry Jones kind of floated out like, hey, they've been looking at some trades the last couple of days.
Baiting the hook, I think, is an appropriate term here based on what he said. He said that they had some bait out on some potential trades. And I think it makes sense. I mean, I wonder if they don't have something in mind and haven't had something in mind for a while, because they have seemed to imply that they were going to make a trade. Earlier in the Schottenheimer press conference potentially. So it does sound like that they are looking at being active in the trade market. I think the question that we had is that, exporting or importing, right? Like, are they bringing players in, or are they sending players out for picks? So I think that's where the real question becomes. To me, like, the bait kind of terminology, and again, this is Jerry's words, right? The bait kind of terminology would seem to imply, I think, that they're, baiting the hook with a player looking for picks in return. But I'm not really sure. What do you think?
It's hard because they've got so many 5th and 6th round picks in this year's draft.
Yeah.
Like, they don't really need more day 3 picks. Yes, they would love to pick up a 4th round pick, but I don't know if they have really anybody on the roster that they could move for a 4th round pick. You and I were kind of speculating, like, if they absolutely wanted to try to get a 4th round pick back, maybe Jake Ferguson's the guy. But I think you only do a trade, like you trade away a guy if you're getting a great return, right? Like a great asset, 1st, 2nd, 3rd round pick, or if you're trading somebody and dumping a bunch of salary so that you can either get under the cap or use that cap space. And you look at their roster, and there's just not many guys that they have that are like guys that they could trade and shed a bunch of cap, or there's just not a lot of guys that you could trade for a 1st or 2nd round pick. So my guess is that they're trying to shop, or they're shopping these 5th round picks that they're going to have. I think 4 5th round picks once the compensatory picks roll in, to see if they can maybe fill a spot before free agency or before the draft. What spot is that? I have no idea.
Yeah, me neither. And I think that is kind of the more interesting thing is that like I said, it almost feels like they have something in mind, right? Like that they are specifically targeting something, or, so it's interesting to kind of speculate there. And I agree, like, kind of after going through the roster with you, there just really isn't anybody on the roster that really makes sense. I mean, I think there are guys that you could trade for a hefty bounty potentially, like guys like Deron Bland, who are still highly thought of on a rookie
Sure.
deal, but you wouldn't do that because you're just creating more work that you have to, another guy that you have to draft. And like, there's lots of those situations where you feel like you could get a high draft pick for a specific player that you have on your roster, but you're also creating a need for that spot while trading away that player. So I think that, to me, even though the language seems to imply that they're exporting, I think the state of the roster would imply, and the fact that they have all those 5th round picks seems to imply that they're looking to try to get a player, which does make sense. It's just hard to say where specifically.
I got a spot that I could see it. Now, this draft is incredible for running backs. We've talked about this all the time. But I wonder if they're looking at the way this draft could fall and be like, hey, we need to get 3 impact players. And maybe there's a chance that the running back that we don't, or that we want, isn't available to us at the 2nd round or the 3rd round. What if you're shopping these 5th round picks to try to get a veteran running back in right now? And like, some of the names that come to mind are like Kenneth Walker in Seattle. They drafted Zach Charbonnet with a 2nd round pick in 2023, right? Or somebody, I'm just throwing Breece Hall. Yeah, or Charbonnet, right? Yeah. Charbonnet was somebody that Dallas liked a lot. He hasn't played a lot because he's been behind Kenneth Walker. What about someone like Breece Hall? No, I don't think the Jets would give up Breece Hall for a 5th round pick, but he's in the final year of his deal. The Jets drafted 2 running backs last year. I wonder if that's a spot where the Cowboys feel like we can get a much better running back for 2/5 or whatever it is than the player that we're going to draft at that spot.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there is, like, and that's the thing, right? Is that, like, you start looking at this, and the running backs coming out of the combine all had really good combines, so you worry that, now everybody's going to get drafted maybe a little bit higher than when you were expecting them to go. The nightmare scenario that you and I've discussed several different times is what happens if all the top 5 running backs are gone before even 44, right? Which you're hoping to get one of them to fall to your 3rd round pick, and there's a chance they don't even show up to your 2nd round pick. So, I mean, I think that, and again, the Cowboys have nothing at running back right now, right? Outside of Lipke and
Deuce
Vaughn, they don't have another running back on their roster. So, I think that's it's a dire situation. I mean, a dire situation because you definitely could go into the draft and get what you need out of it, but maybe you're a little bit nervous watching some of this draft sequencing. Maybe you're going through some of the mock drafting and just to see how things fall, and 25% of your simulations, those running backs you want aren't getting to your pick. So
I'll give you another one. What about someone like Travis Etienne, who has clearly fallen out of favor in Jacksonville? He's on the final year of his deal. Tank Bigsby was the starter there last year. Maybe you flip a 5th for Travis Etienne, a guy that Jacksonville might cut anyways, and at least it gives you an NFL starting running back as we get closer to the draft. That doesn't preclude you at all from drafting a running back if the right one falls to you, but maybe they like that option better than signing Rico Dowdle to 2 years, $9 million.
Yeah, because it gives you a cheaper than that floor and an NFL, starting level quality running back, right? Like a guy that isn't laughed out of the room as a potential competitor for a starting position as running back. So I think it doesn't need to be going to trade for your starting running back. It could just be trading for a running back who is good enough that if at the absolute worst case scenario, like I think about the Schoonmaker tight end, situation when in the draft, right? When the Cowboys were just waiting for that next pick and they were just watching all those tight ends fall off the board, right? Like, I don't think the Cowboys want to get into that situation at running back, especially starting running back.
No,
where you're watching all these guys fall to all these teams, and then suddenly you're left with the bag, and you really don't know what to do at running back. It'd be good to have something like that, a vet running back already on your team, just in case you get left with an empty bag.
And a lot of times these guys are just going to be a lot cheaper, like contract-wise, than even signing Rico Dowdle, who I don't think is going to command a ton of money on the open market, but I do think maybe you could get the right kind of guy in here for a pretty cheap price. I'm just telling you right now, most of the 5th round picks the Cowboys are going to make here probably aren't going to make their active roster. Yeah. That's why 5th round picks aren't worth that much. But I do think in a trade, maybe you can get a better player back. We'll see if the Cowboys do anything over the next couple of weeks, but keep an eye out for that. Later, let's talk quarterbacks. Will the Dallas Cowboys draft one early in the 2025 NFL draft? We will get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft Show with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day, and find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. This next question, Landon, comes from Matt. He wants to know, the Cowboys are interested in drafting a quarterback this year. We know that. Stephen Jones told us that. Where and when makes sense for the Cowboys to do this?
It's funny because we had this little conversation in the last segment about potential trade market, and I'm looking at the situation, and more I'm wondering if that isn't a solution for the backup quarterback situation as well, right? Because I think it's one of those things where you look at the class, and I mean, look, it's just not a good year to be trying to get a quarterback in this class. It's not a great class at the top, and really it's not so great in the middle either, right? I think there are a couple guys that are potentially interesting names that you could draft, and I think that could be guys that you feel like, this is the real issue, could be rookie backup quarterbacks, right? Because that's really, I mean, man, talk about trying to thread a needle. Like, how do you develop a backup rookie quarterback, right? Like, you're not giving them enough snaps to really develop, and that's kind of why you have a veteran as a backup quarterback, because you know that they don't need as many snaps, they don't take as many resources to kind of come into a game if they need to. So
I wonder if Will Greer will be back as the backup. Like, if Dak were to miss a single game, or if Dak were to get hurt and you just need somebody to finish out the game, if it's somebody like Will Greer who knows the system. But if it's something like last year where Dak is out for 8 games, that's where you would see the rookie quarterback play.
Yeah, I mean, I would think it need to be, because if you don't really have, if it's not Greer, then the Cowboys need to kind of figure that out, because I don't know that any of these guys I'm going to feel comfortable like, oh no, Dak's down, here comes Quinn Ewers to come take him to take his spot. I mean, I like Ewers as a middle round guy, but I don't think that, like, you're going to feel comfortable about a rookie guy being the sole backup for a guy that's frankly, he's missed some time these last few years and is not a low injury risk. So you really kind of need to have a solid plan here.
Let me ask you this. What type of backup quarterback, or what type of rookie quarterback do you think the Cowboys are interested in? Do you think they're looking for more of the low ceiling but high floor pocket passer, or do you think they're looking for someone with a little bit maybe more athleticism that has some maybe upside to be a starter down the road?
I think they probably are looking for the latter, but I would be worried about doing that without having a veteran backup quarterback in hand, right? Like, so if you're truly trying to draft a rookie to be a backup quarterback, I think you go with Tyler. I don't know how to say
Shuck,
yeah. Or one of these older guys, high floor guys, or not high floor. I mean, guys that you feel like can run an offense, at least get the play call going and that sort of thing. And that's who I would take. But if you're looking to develop a backup quarterback who could potentially be a starter, or be a trade piece that you could trade down the road, maybe that is a Jalen Milroe, right? Maybe that is a guy that, like, there's definitely some warts to his game, but the athleticism is obviously apparent, that if he could figure out a couple things, maybe suddenly he has a Jalen Hurts type of career arc, right?
So one of the feelings, and please, I hope you tell me I'm wrong, one of the feelings that I've gotten over the last couple of weeks, and this is no insider information, just wondering, thinking out loud. Not Shador. Don't worry. I'm not going to talk about
it. Okay. Go. I was going to say.
Not Shador. But I'm wondering if they're starting to look at some of these day 3 picks and thinking that they're going to try to use those picks to fill needs, maybe with trades, like they did 2 years ago with the Gilmore and Cooks trade. And I'm wondering if Dallas is like a sneaky team to use pick 44 on a quarterback. And I think that's entirely too high, especially in this class. But I think if you wait until the 3rd round, the 4th, Cowboys don't have a 4th round pick, but if you wait till the 3rd round, all these guys are probably going to be gone. And it's pretty obvious that they want to draft a quarterback. And honestly, Landon, they probably should. With Dak's injury history, we're starting to get to the point where it's like him getting hurt is no longer a surprise. Like it's now becoming a bad trend. I wonder if they are like one of these teams that could take a Tyler Shuck or a Jackson Dart, like in round 2, and just shock us all.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking 44, I'm definitely hoping they're talking more of a Jackson Dart than a Tyler Shuck. I mean, I want a guy with like upside that's worth developing and all that. Like, especially at 44, like that's an upside pick. You're not picking a high floor quarterback that isn't good enough to be a starter. Because otherwise they'd be a first round pick. Those guys just basically don't exist, right? Like,
No,
I mean,
Shuck
is a guy that you don't ever want to see taking snaps on your NFL team. Not that like because he's your backup, right? Like, you don't ever want to plan on having him as your starter. So, if they do that, they better wow us with who they're getting with some of those fifth round trades.
I mean, the thing is, you draft Shuck at 44. You know what that means, though, right? Like, they believe he can be a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I know, and that's scary to me. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's if they take him at 40. Well, no, I don't know that that's what that means anymore. Like I think that if you believe a guy's a franchise quarterback, you're taking him in the first round, right?
Well, but I don't think. Yes,
especially because you're developing a guy, you want that 5th year, right? So if anything, the Cowboys, if they're really viewing Tyler Shuck like that, they need to trade up from 44 to go get him at 32 or 31, right? Like that's what I mean. That's I mean, listen, that's look, if you think this guy's your franchise quarterback, buddy, then
this is a really weird conversation to have because you just made Dak Prescott the highest paid quarterback in the league, and his new contract is just kicking in now. But it does seem like the Cowboys have some urgency to start drafting a quarterback to get ready for the next era, because I guess at this point I would be kind of shocked if Dak were to sign another contract with the Cowboys. It's just, when is the right time to be looking for the next quarterback, and when is the right time to be throwing all these assets onto your offense or your defense trying to make a run? I don't know, but that's the kind of the fine line the Cowboys are going to have to try to walk this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, it might be better just to collect assets and then keep holding them over and wait until you're ready to cash them all in to trade up and go get your quarterback.
I'm not ready for the quarterback conversation again. This is not that much fun, but it would be fun if Shedeur was there at 12. That would get Cowboy fans.
No, it's not.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. And we'll see you right back here tomorrow.